This is NTV.
Thanks our viewers for joining us. I'm Karaga Bodwins and we're coming to you live from the Kampala Arena International Conference Center. We are suspending the live broadcast from the Uganda Parliament for a very crucial reason. We are going to be forwarding this discussion that we're going to proceed with. Otherwise, please continue on our Facebook and our YouTube channels and you continue watching what is going on. We are going to talk about Uganda's constitutionalism. How do we keep our sanctity of the Constitution? Is it defendable? Can we celebrate it? Is it worth celebrating and is it worth believing? And for the continuation of this particular subject, let's first get a preface to this matter with this introduction.
The Constitution of Uganda is the supreme law of the nation. The present Constitution was adopted on 8th October 1995. It is Uganda's fourth constitution since the country's independence from Britain in 1962. The primary function of a constitution is to lay out the basic structure of the government according to which people are to be governed. It is the constitution of a country which establishes the three arms of government, namely the legislature, executive and judiciary. Article 1 of the 1995 Constitution unambiguously vests all the power to citizens of the nation, entrenching the sovereignty of the people over its own nation and destiny. The article states that all power belongs to the people who shall exercise their sovereignty in accordance with the Constitution. Without limiting effect of Clause 1 of this article, all authority in the state emanates from the people of Uganda, and the people shall be governed through their will and consent. All power and authority of government and its organs derive from this Constitution, which in turn derives its authority from the people, who consent to be governed in accordance with the Constitution. The people shall express their will and consent on who shall govern them, and how they should be governed, through regular, free and fair elections of their representatives or through referenda. This show, brought to you by Uganda Human Rights Commission in conjunction with NTV Uganda, seeks to highlight the salient need for us to uphold, defend and celebrate our constitution as Ugandans. You are welcome.
And indeed, on that particular preface, we are going to have our conversation. And in studio, of course, in conjunction with the Uganda Human Rights Commission, I have a very resplendent panel of distinguished public servants that have very cognizant competence to discuss this matter. I have just right next to me, in the center of this panel, Mr. Medi S.K. Kagwa, the chairperson, Uganda Human Rights Commission. And at the extreme end, I have Kamadi Bionabie, Director, Research, Education and Documentation. Gentlemen, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And Medi, of course, I do not know what SK means. Okay, Sozi Kagwa. So we have the Constitution itself having been made in 1995, or just a follow-up of other three constitutions. Of course, through constitutionalism turmoil. We need you to give us just a slight brief background on the basis upon which actually this Constitution was done.
Thank you very much. I think before I add on another matters, I want to think the preamble of our Constitution summarizes this, and I want to read it verbatim. With the people of Uganda, recalling our history, which has been characterized by political and constitutional instability, recognizing our struggles against the forces of tyranny, oppression and exploitation, committed to building a better future by establishing a social, economic, and political order through a popular and durable national constitution based on the principles of unity, peace, equality, democracy, freedom, and social justice and progress. This is in a nutshell, summarizes it. But what I want to add on, and you correctly said this was the fourth constitution, this 1995 Constitution is different from the other constitutions we've had because this was made after thorough consultations. The entire country was traversed and people gave their views, And after that, the Constitutional Commission wrote the draft constitution, which was later debated by the Constituent Assembly and eventually passed on the 8th of September. So this makes it different from the others because we know the 1966 Constitution was
and on the screen, this is just a stipulation of the historical.
Yes, and then there was the pigeonhole, and then later on the decrees and all that. But what is significant is that this one was by the people of Uganda.
All right. Okay, so the basis is that you had the tyrannical past and the
instability, and respect for the Constitution and all that.
Okay, and come to Kamadi. You know, Article 2 of the 1995 Constitution states that it is the supreme law of Uganda and shall have binding force on all authorities and persons throughout Uganda. And if any other law or any custom is inconsistent with any of the provisions of this Constitution, the Constitution shall prevail, and that other law or custom shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be void. So how significant is the sanctity and supremacy of a constitution, of a national constitution, in the preservation and actually sustainability of a state?
Thank you very much. You see, the constitution is the supreme law of the country, implying whatever other piece of legislation you think about must be consistent and in line with the Constitution. It therefore means it should be a document which is solid, which is respected, and which transcends generations. For that matter, everybody should do what is possible to ensure that the sanctity of the Constitution is respected, because it is the supreme law.
And when we're talking about sanctity, is that you don't tinker with it, you don't do too much unnecessary regular amendments and, you know, the tinkering that comes
with. Like the chairperson has
interest.
just said,
yes.
This is a constitution that came into being after country-wide consultations for a protracted period of time, implying for you to tamper with it, you must go through a similar process, so that everybody is fully consulted and is in agreement. But you've just talked about tampering with it. The Constitution itself has a chapter in it that provides for its amendment, implying the drafters of the Constitution in you, time would come that with changing times, there might be need after a given period of time to seek to cause an amendment, but it must be in line with the provisions of the Constitution and through the participation of the people who were responsible for its enactment. Okay,
and one of the critical reasons maybe that we're here, you are proposing that we should do a celebration of the Uganda Constitution, and you've set up Friday, 5th October, this very week, to have celebrations, to have a national dialogue. So I just want to understand what informed your decision, and perhaps you can give us slight more details on that.
What informed this decision is partly the question that came prior to this one. It's the supreme law of the country. What does this mean if you unpack it? Respect, institutions, the governance of a country, rule of law in a country. So we want to keep reminding Ugandans that, look, you made this document called the Constitution. It has a provision that governs us. You must at all times remember this Constitution, whatever you want to do. That's why even it goes to say, like my colleague mentioned, that if any other law is inconsistent with it, it's null and void to that extent. So we want to keep, because under the Constitution in our mandate, we also duty-bound to do civic education, to educate the people on the Constitution. Because, first of all, like we said in human rights, you cannot claim a right you don't know. So if you don't know what is contained in the Constitution, maybe you may not know, you may not properly claim your rights. So as one of our mandate, we are supposed to teach the people the Constitution, to understand it, so that at any one time, one may say, yes, this is the document governing me, and I must respect it. And like we go to our respective religious places, they remind us of what we know. But they keep reminding us, oh, you don't do this. It's not because you don't know, but human beings forget. Human beings at times are negligent and all that. So the reason we said this is an important document, particularly that it was it was enacted after very, very wide consultation, countrywide actually, countrywide.
But if the critical standing point, the pillars of the Constitution have been actually altered, and of course through turbulent political interventions or interferences, what do you make as a basis for people to actually have that confidence and the justification for them to have a celebration of this when they feel that actually the very core pillars of the Constitution, the removal, of course, of the presidential term limit, of the age limit, or which we had been consulted about, just a bit of a political spin on that, just shortly.
Again, this goes back to the Constitution, and my colleague alluded to it. The Constitution itself provides you of amendment. And like I said, if there was no anticipation of changes as the Constitution runs, it wouldn't have provided for the amendment. But you also note in that Constitution that there are various ways of amendment. There is one by referendum, there is one by local councils, and I think one by parliament. So it's important that people realize that when the Constitution is amended, the question that would arise, have they followed the law? And if not, that's why we have had constitutional petitions. And the question would be, what have the courts ruled? Have they said this one nugatory? Did the court overturn those? I think there are some recent constitutional case. There was a matter that was not accepted by all of them, the extension. So that should not worry people. To me, what would worry me is that a proper procedure has not been followed. And this brings me to another key important thing about the Constitution, the institutions. The institutions that govern, that are prescribed in the Constitution. The legislature, the executive, the judiciary. Do each of these branches do their work properly? That's why when the executive or parliament does something and some citizen feels it's not consistent with the Constitution, they go to the other arm of government, the judiciary. And the judiciary is the arbiter in this matter.
All right, definitely I would have follow-up questions because of constraint of time. So I'm going to go to a break and come back to the element of people power, okay, the first article of the Constitution. Please, our viewers, thanks for keeping with us. We'll come back just after this short break. Thanks our viewers for keeping with us and keeping on your number one station, NTV. I'm Karaga Bodwins, and we're discussing the sanctity and the supremacy of the Uganda Constitution and the need for us to celebrate that Constitution. And after this discussion, hopefully you'll be able to make up your mind and ascertain whether it's really tenable or not. And Kamadi, Article 1 of the 1995 Constitution says that all power belongs to the people, who shall exercise their sovereignty in accordance with this Constitution, and without limiting the effect of Clause 1 of this article, all authority in the state emanates from the people of Uganda, and the people shall be governed through their will and consent. All power and authority of government and its organs derive from this Constitution, which in turn derives this authority from the people who consent to be governed in accordance with the Constitution. So, Kamadi, just assessing with the passage of time, I need you to understand, to help us understand, is Uganda's performance in upholding this Constitution, and especially in respect to Article 1, that people are at the center and at the helm of how the country is governed. What is your assessment, and perhaps from the quarters of your studies and research, because you're the head of research and education in Uganda Human Rights Commission?
Thank you very much. Before even any research is made, it is clear that you and I being here where we are under the framework of this Constitution. Article 4 of the Constitution talks about public awareness, and one way of doing it is through the media. So that might be assessment number one in terms of upholding the Constitution. Actually, what we are doing here is constitutional, clearly provided for make public awareness of the Constitution through the media. But putting that aside, all authority emanates from this constitution in this country. There is no doubt that the
actually from the people. People grant the authority to the constitution, and then all authority that passed on to people governing.
Exactly. In as far as we have regular, free and fair elections, then the people have put in place leaders to govern them. And that is also derived from Article 38 of the Constitution, where every citizen is free to either stand for an elective position or to decide to be a voter, either way. That's why you see our politicians who present themselves and those who choose to be voters. That is purely, in effect, enhancing the applicability of Article 1 of the Constitution. Since 1995, we have had regular elections, 1996, 2011, 2016. That is consistent with what is provided for under Article 1 of the Constitution. When you look at the provisions that put in place the judiciary, for instance, judicial authority is also derived from the people, implying the existence
How is judicial authority derived from the people, yet the judiciary is actually appointed by the executive branch and of course somehow endorsed or rubber stamped to some interpretation by Parliament?
You are aware that the executive that appoints the judiciary is put in place by the people. So, by extrapolation, judicial authority is also derived from the people. That's why you and I cannot appoint a judicial officer, because you don't have that authority from the people. So,
but do you think it gives substantive authentication of the centrality of people in choosing the judiciary that they need? Don't you think there's an element of bias and actually self-interest in the executive when it appoints the judiciary itself?
We have parameters. We have the Judicial Service Commission that does the vetting and everything, and the law simply provides for the president to issue an instrument of appointment. It's not that the executive wakes up and appoints a judicial officer. No, this is procedural, and it is important to understand that. It doesn't mean anybody can be picked up anyhow. There is a full process of where the recommendations made by the Judicial Service Commission to the president nominates. These names are taken to Parliament for vetting. And in its wisdom, the appointments committee can decline to approve certain nominees. So you cannot say the process is flawed or rubber stamped. No.
Okay. So in your assessment, actually, there's an upholding of Article 1.
Exactly. But let me add this. Today, as you know, we were talking about judicial authority being derived from the people. Courts of law are working. They are releasing people on bail. They are sentencing others. They are, doing everything as the process that is going on.
Okay.
So clearly, the rule of law has taken shape in our country.
Yes.
Yes, there might be challenges here and there, but we must recognize the fact that the 1995 Constitution is making a lot of progress in the governance of our country.
Very well said, indeed. And let me get to Medi. And you head the Uganda Human Rights Commission, which is set under Article 51 of the Constitution. And your vision is to be a society that respects human rights and fulfills civic obligations. And the mission is to protect and promote fundamental human rights and freedoms in Uganda for sustainable development. And you have made significant press releases, because actually that mandate is supposed to empower you to protect or to be able to participate in the protection of the human rights of the Ugandans. So just help us what actually you have accomplished so far and how you participate in the upholding of the supremacy and the sanctity of the Constitution.
Thank you very much for that question. First of all, like I always say, one of the things which we need to appreciate we actually is our mandate to make everybody understand the Constitution. And I reiterate what I said earlier on. You cannot claim a right you don't know. Now, as far as we are concerned, we get complaints from the public, and we have a tribunal, and we compensate, and people are given their awards. Of course, like my colleague said, challenges are there, at times the money delays. We've tried to educate the public through the civic education we do. We've I think we've made some mark, because I see many times people running to us even when things are not within our mandate. We are forced, of course, we have a procedure where if we can't handle the matter, we refer it to the relevant authority or agency for that matter.
Just about 3 issues, just in articulation, because you've made press releases. I remember the most recent one, which you were making about the brutalization and the chaos which was in the north after the election of the. So because it seems your function is there just to soothe and smoothen the tempers in society, but actually you do not do anything. You don't have substantive power to either have your recommendations enforced. So how justifiable is your existence? Just about 3 things you've accomplished.
We have a tribunal. If somebody lodges a complaint, gets to the tribunal, they will give you compensation. That's 1. 2, even that press conference to bring it to the notice of the state, is this an achievement? 3, the making the people appreciate that they have rights and they can use their powers in the Constitution to seek for the rights is another 3rd issue that I could...
Okay, one of the persons you've helped to gain compensation from maybe the abuse of the state. Just let us know one. A group or a person?
Several.
Who? Just give me one.
No, of course I wouldn't come with any, but if you look at our report, annual report, every year when we do the annual report towards the end, we put a list of people we have awarded compensation. It's always there. So
you feel you are a sanctuary that people can actually turn to if they're in terms of trouble with a state which is abusing their rights?
I like that, because even those who didn't believe in us have had their own problems, and now they say, Chair, we now know what you do. We have, certainly we have. We overwhelmed. I'll tell you frankly, we overwhelmed. We overwhelmed by people coming to us. We have 10 regional offices, now we have 12 field offices. But any one time you go there, you'll find a few people. And to me, if we didn't, people didn't feel we can be of use to them, they wouldn't be coming to us.
Okay.
No, they wouldn't.
So, let me get to Kamal. Thank you so much, Mary. I have a friend, not a friend, but a public figure who is an artist and has these lyrics. Listen to them very well. He says that we are living in a world similar to the one of slave trade. The oppression is worse than apartheid. The gun is the master, citizen slave. The Pearl of Africa is bleeding. Question, what was the purpose of the liberation? When we can't have a peaceful transition? What is the purpose of the Constitution when the government disrespects the Constitution? Where is my freedom of expression when you charge me because of my expression? Look what you're doing to this nation. Those are lyrics of one of the prominent musicians that indeed probably you might be resonating with. So what power do people have, the common citizen, to make sure that they can either curb or restrain or inhibit the state from actually abusing their own rights and making an infringement on them from enjoying the liberties that are constituted in the Constitution?
Quite interesting. The power that the citizens have, that's why we are struggling to carry out this type of civic education, for people to understand the social contract that they have between themselves and the state. The moment elections are held and the government is put in power, right from LOC1 up to the highest office in the land, that is a social contract. Therefore, the issue of guaranteeing the enjoyment of the human rights of the people becomes an obligation. It's not a privilege. There is the social contract between we the citizens and the state. The unfortunate thing is sometimes we, as a people, we tend not to agree with what we put in place to govern ourselves. When you get a death announcement on via radio, it doesn't mean break your radio. What point am I making? If you have a provision in the Constitution that allows you to amend the Constitution, in as long as a due process, like Chairperson said, is followed through your freely elected representatives, then you don't have reason to complain, and as long as due process is followed. Now, what we need people to know is what is the role of an MOP? How is the Constitution sustained? How is it amended? If due process is followed, whether you are happy with it or not, that is the dictates of democracy. It doesn't matter whether you are happy or not. And the special hours of where winner takes it all, we go with the majority, as long as due process has been followed. We just need to understand what document is before us and how is it implemented. And that is the struggle we are in to educate people about the Constitution.
But just a little bit, and I'm going to get back to you on this. You see, there's a dichotomy of two power disparities, which is people, the power of people, and the power of people in power. Okay? So in that particular contrast or observation, do you feel that actually the people who are not in power have equally a very grave or sufficient influence on the people in power to make sure that even the process, because you can make laws when you're in power, to make sure that they favor you in obtaining your own selfish interests? Do you feel, and with your assessment, with due honesty, that actually the people who have no power have actual power over those who are in power?
Your question is subjective, but my answer is yes and no. Yes and no. Because we don't have a category of people that is completely well informed. And so it's a dichotomy. There are those who appreciate these processes. There are those who follow a bandwagon effect, even if due process is followed. So it's a yes and no. Those we have also a tendency of a sense of entitlement, what you are calling the power of the people in power. Yeah. But what we emphasize is the aspect of accountability. The people in power must always remember that they were taken there by some people. That's why you see under Article 1, through regular, free and fair elections, that provision was put there. Should you see people in power who are abusing their power, you have a time frame within which to renew their mandate or advise them to live gracefully. And this power is with the people, except if they don't want to use it.
Okay, Mehdi, just a minute, please.
Two, three things. It brings me to institutions, and this is part of the constitutions. Do we have institutions that can give redress to people who are aggrieved, like you called them what?
The people power.
The chorus, the song, the lyrics. You know,
what was the purpose of the liberation when we can't have a peaceful transition? What is the purpose of the Constitution when the government disrespects the Constitution?
This brings me to the issue of institution. Do we have institutions that give redress where one feels aggrieved? The answer is yes. The courts are there. Parliament through our MPs is there. The issue has raised. There are regular elections. If you feel your rights and whatever are not achieved, you can either go to court, you can go through your MOP, you can decide not to renew the mandate of that person. And interestingly, and I find this very interesting as very, very important as a lawyer, all constitutional petitions, their lordship have made a general policy almost that they never award the course. And you can bring a matter of importance to constitutional court, so that you can get redress. So the question, do we utilize the institution that we have that could give us redress where we feel oppressed? Okay,
so there's a book called, the title, Constitution Without Constitutionalism. Very paradoxical title in there. Interrogating the Africa experience. The author is Abolisedi Olasunkamnimi, some Nigerian up there. And his abstract says that the idea of constitutionalism project is in two alternatives: constitution without constitutionalism and constitution with constitutionalism. So you have constitutions that have lasted over a span of period of time. Like the US's constitution was drafted in and promulgated in 1787. It's lasted for over 231. So how do people, just briefly, like in 2 minutes, how do people fight to conserve their constitution for a long time? And we do not have these frequent, literally like very monotonous changes that come with it.
I think for me the issue is getting to understand the Constitution itself. 2, sending people who represent us who can articulate our views. 3, using the institution that we have to give us redress where we feel aggrieved. I've liked that issue of constitutionalism. It has to be grown. It has to be grown. It took many years to fight slave traders, in America. So over time, and this is why I say it's part of our mandate, because it's there in Article 52, making the people aware. That's why we are now going to schools, right? We have formed the human rights clubs in schools so that people grow up knowing there is a document called the Constitution. It must be respected at all times. And this brings me to the issue. Why do we teach people? Many people think rights. But rights have corresponding responsibilities. I always give the example of the accountants. They have the assets and the liabilities. We tend to concentrate on the assets, not the liabilities. But the key thing is that they are institutions that can give redress. I see many people going to court these days, and I love it because it puts the government, on its alert. But the key thing would be to grow it up, to appreciate it. I have like some politicians say, no, we want to go to do things peacefully. That's already moving towards constitutionalism. The other issue that I may raise is that I think the public needs to accountability from their leaders. And it's the responsibility of the duty bearers to see that accountability is given to the people they lead.
All right, and thanks for that articulation. I'm going to go for a break, and when I come back, how do we make sure that new generations which didn't participate in the promulgation of a constitution actually adopt that constitution and preserve it? And thanks our viewers for keeping with us. We're going for a break, and we'll be right back. And indeed, we are your number one station. We're coming to you live from the Kampala International Conference Center. We are discussing the Uganda human rights aspects and, of course, the status in Uganda, but focusing on constitutionalism in the nation. And I would refer you to this book. If you can go and get it, again, it's called Constitution Without Constitutionalism, Interrogating the African Experience. And let me just read again that extract. You will understand why it's very important. It says that every political system has a constitution, whether it is a constitutional system or not. But in Africa, constitution without constitutionalism is well instituted in governance. That has been responsible for her inability to progress. Any constitution without constitutionalism will definitely create a disconnection between the state and the citizen, as it often does, making it increasingly difficult for the citizens to rely on the state. And Kamadi, on this very aspect, which is of course, the paradox that you have a constitution, but there's no constitutionalism. Now you're bringing in a new generation, young people who are inheriting this document or this particular constitution. They never participated in its promulgation. And you are intending to make them succeed on with it. How do you convince these people, if especially they are seeing people in power not practicing constitutionalism, but there's a constitution, how do you convince the young generations to adopt that document as a sacred document?
I like the question,
yes,
because I'm among the younger people you are talking about.
Yes.
I couldn't vote in the CA for the delegates because I was not yet of voting age. Although I wanted, I was already following national events, but I couldn't vote. So I cannot claim to have been part of the process. But I observed the process. But that notwithstanding, I should be able to uphold what our elders put in place. I think we should discourage a culture that wants to directly be involved in each and everything. We must appreciate the fact that not whatever we use is put in place during our lifetime. So that's why we talk about sustainable development. Development that looks at the present but taking care of the future. Now, if there are aspects in the Constitution which the younger generation feels do not favor them, the recourse mechanism is that Constitution, because it provides for how you can go about what you think is not right. The other aspect, which has also been talked about, is to read and understand the Constitution. But for those who are already in positions of leadership, the elders who could have participated, the aspect is, first of all, to make the younger generation appreciate where we are coming from. That is the preamble our chairperson talked about. We have all learned that in history. You don't need to have been there to understand what happened. We all know there is a country in this world called the US. Majority of us have not been there, but we believe it is there. What about the history we are being told about in our own midst here? It's very easy to understand. So we should do, what should be encouraged is to teach the younger generation the history where we are coming from. They used to tell us that history is the study of past events, but that is a narrow definition of history at elementary level. When you go into advanced studies, you realize that history is the study of the past, the present, and the future. Because why do we talk about, for instance, the French Revolution? It set a very important benchmark in terms of good governance, in terms of ideas of liberty and equality.
And in terms of how to make sure that you combat a government which is abusive to its citizenry.
Exactly. So the younger generation needs to understand very well what is in the Constitution. We are talking about constitutionalism. It's a culture that is built over time. So let us appreciate that our elders put in place a constitution. What is expected of us? To respect it. If we have issues, their grievance, there are mechanisms to address the grievances within the Constitution. Article 29, for instance, provides for freedom of association, freedom of to petition peaceful and unarmed. That is one way of expressing ourselves. We do not want to use unlawful means to address our grievances, and that is a challenge the youth is facing today. You don't just wake up and beat up people, shout. No, they are peaceful means of resolving issues, and that precisely touches on what we are terming as constitutionalism. You will address an issue without any problem, without harming others. So the younger generation needs to read the Constitution, understand it, and if there are grievances, seek which provision of the Constitution can help me to get what I want.
Thanks, Kamadi. And I think we're going to open up phone lines just for you to call in and participate in just briefly before we get to the 5-hour mark. And on that regard, as we do so, let me ask, yes, what is your response? If you have a government that seemingly does not respect the Constitution, he's talking about Article 29, which gives all these liberties. I'm walking on the street and putting on perhaps a red banner or a yellow banner in an expression of my dissatisfaction and disenchantment with what the government is doing. Then the government brings all the military hardware, comes to simply bamboozle me and literally kill me off the streets. How do I get to appreciate that government? Why don't I actually do away with the Constitution and we have a rogue state where we can now take over power as young people and redeem?
Unfortunately, if you use that method, you may find after some time similar methods are used. And yet in that book you quoted, the issue is constitutionalism, not merely having a constitution. But to me, I think to avoid that, because I think we must find a way forward to address the younger people to appreciate the Constitution, the issue of accountability is very, very important. Do our leaders account to the people, including the youth? Providing social services. Because what are the issues for the youth? They want to go to a hospital, there is medicine, there is a doctor, they want to go to school, they are teachers and all that. Employment is another issue. Do you involve them? Because constitutionalism should involve everybody at their levels. If you are an MP, you are bound to go and consult your people. The public can send you to Parliament and say, raise this on our behalf. The issues of freedoms we've talked about, are they given the freedom that the Constitution provides for? And you said if you are walking the red banner, they come on. That's why we come in and say, government, I think this was excessive use of force. Somebody has lodged a complaint, we assess it, or say, go to the tribunal. Tribunal says, yes, government was in a breach, we award you compensation. The issue of involving people at all levels, everybody have their ideas. there is no idea that is not useful. You know, now at my age, when I look at my children, their views are different from mine.
True.
They are fond of telling me, Daddy, those were your days. These are our days. I think we need a dialogue.
Yes.
To me, I think we need a dialogue.
Mutual respect.
And mutual respect. And also to appreciate that what may pertain, there are standard things that have generated to everybody. Then there are specific issues to particular groups. That's why you have vulnerable groups. We have women groups. We have people with disability. It's the responsibility of the duty bearer to go out and to seek to know what serves these interests. And in so doing, you will be accountable, and they will automatically respect the Constitution. I see in Europe, when an issue comes up, an MP will stand up and say, my people are saying this. And I'm happy for me. I see when we came in and were seeing people voting. Let the people know
who is voting for and
yes.
against mobile money tax. Yes.
Yes.
Let me do we have a phone call? Hello? Okay, no calls, I think, in the meantime. So let's just wrap this up by getting to prognosticate how the future of this constitutional abidance is going to be. Do you feel we have a bright future to come for the respect of law based on the circumstances that are prevailing politically, socially, and economically? Or you have a certain fear that we might have a breakdown? Let me start with Kamadi, then you wrap it up. Okay. Yes.
To me, the future is bright. I'm always optimistic. We already have a starting point in place. All we need is to build upon what we have, address any challenges that may could arise, and then and move on. Actually, you are calling this a celebration, but it is more of commemoration. There's a difference between celebrating and commemorating. We are commemorating to take stock of achievements made, challenges we are facing, and the way forward. And
that's actually on the 5th of October, this very Friday.
Yeah.
And so that's just 4 days up before the independence.
Exactly. We've talked of the strides made. The three arms of government are in place, checking each other, governing this country on a daily basis. Should we feel that there are aspects that we need to address, again, our Constitution provides for how that should be done. So I'm optimistic that this popular constitution that was put in place through countrywide consultations gives us a foundation on which to build. The American Constitution you are talking about also was drafted like this one. It had its day one. So we are now counting 20 plus. Therefore, we look forward to sustaining this constitution, but each of us has a role to play. Well, let us fulfill our duties. Let us fulfill our duties and responsibilities. We should be able to nurture and enhance the spirit of constitutionalism in our country.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks for the optimism. Yes, Medical, I'll give it up.
Yes, I think the Constitution has a future, and I base my view on 2-3 things. One, the fact that it has persisted. That is very, very important. We've had cases
about 23 years
where constitutions have been overthrown. We've had cases where constitutions are put in pigeonholes. But so far, the Constitution has persisted. But most importantly...
Okay, now, very politely, I apologize for... I'm hearing a call. I'm being told to pick up this call.
All right.
Yes, hello, somebody online?
Oh.
Okay. Unfortunately, he has dropped off. I apologize for that.
No, that's okay.
The person is back. The person is back.
All right.
Hello? Hello? Yes, good evening. I need volume in studio so that I can hear who is talking. Hello?
Okay, I'm calling the Okwana Joseph.
Yes, Joseph. Good evening. Where are you calling from?
Thank you for your education there.
Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Banda.
Banda, yes. Joseph, please go ahead with your comment or question.
Okay, I just want to know where I can get the Constitution book and how much does it cost, so that I can read my Constitution as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Very clear and all right. Yes, Mary?
In fact, Joseph has even given me another reason.
Yes.
Joseph says, I want to know where I can get the Constitution and read it. It means Joseph wants to be governed, wants to see whatever it demands, and then read the constitution and say, this is my right. Two, and to me...
Another call. You're exciting. So the feedback of the calls make the impression that actually people are listening. Hello, good evening. Please try to mute your television or just move away from it. Hello? Hello? Okay, he's been lost because...
yes. I was saying, it, and to me the most important thing, I've not heard anybody who says we must get our rights, the freedom to express themselves, not referring to the Constitution.
True.
To me,
another caller is... Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, good evening, gentlemen. Your name and where you're calling from?
Yeah, I'm called Arion Innocent.
Nice to hear you. Your question or comment? Briefly as you can, please.
Yes. I'm really I'm grateful for the program which is going on.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, the Constitution is one of the documents which is very important in our country.
Yes.
In relation to what you're discussing, I see in our country right now, Constitution is seen just like a book, any other document. It is one thing that should be guiding us in the governance.
Okay, in 30 seconds, why do you say so? Why do you have that sentiment?
Yes, why I say so is that recently I thought some amendments were done, and I don't blame, because a particular sector of the party was the majority. But here is what I'm saying is that the youth of this country should know that they play a major role in the country. One, by either getting involved actively in politics of Uganda, because if they don't, then the community will vote the wrong people to go in the parliament and make bad policies. See that?
Okay, well said indeed. Let's respond to that. Thank you so much. So maybe just 3 minutes and we need to be out of here.
That is yet another good point Innocent has made. He says he wants the youth to get involved in the politics. That is, again, is constitutionalism, because there are free, regular elections. And we have elections at various levels. ROCs, you can opt to go to ROCs, you can opt to go to local government, you can opt to go to parliament, you can even opt to go for the highest office. So my call would be, youth, you are the majority. Use your numbers. Come out. Some people are shy. They don't want to come out.
Come where?
When the elections come and bid.
Okay.
I went to parliament when I was a younger man.
But we're told that actually those elections are somehow manipulated and doctored, and actually they don't reflect the will of the people.
So long as
and some of the petitions have reflected that and declared that actually some of the elections had been stolen. So perhaps it's demoralizing on that ground.
The petitions I've known, I think we have had it too. One of them said the alleged fraud was not sufficient enough to overturn the elections. But the key point Innocent has made, let the youth get involved in the politics. This idea of leaving things for others, to me, will not assist the youth. But what I was saying that the other reason I have for having hope, that all people who are aggrieved, all people have said we want this, that, are saying the Constitution gives us this power. And as I said, the institutions are there. Parliament, court, and what have you. Let's use these provisions. But let's also get to know the Constitution. Let's get to know the Constitution, because I repeat, you cannot claim a right you don't know.
All right. Yes. And on that ground, Medieske Kagwa, Chairperson, Uganda Human Rights Commission, and Kamadi Bionabye, Director of Research, Education and Documentation. It's been such a grand pleasure having you. I know you're itching to say something, but time is out.
No, Joseph is asking for a constitution.
All right, by the way, where to get it?
Having listened in and participated in this program,
yes,
I invite him to come to the commission and I give him a copy of the constitution.
Okay, all right.
But the others can buy. They are in bookshops and in these bookshops.
And they're also online. They're PDF packages of them. Thanks our viewers indeed for keeping with us this afternoon. It's been a very spectacular discussion, which is extremely pertinent, that we need to be involved in the running of our nation to make sure that we be constitutional, we uphold constitutionalism. And this is NTV. We're going to proceed into our live programming with a bit. I'm Karaga Bodwins. Good evening.